This is probably going to be a weird episode because, one, I have no idea where to begin, and two, I have no idea where we're even going to end up because I don't know that there's a solution here. But to make a long story short, I had over $7,000 stolen from me by a company in the Audi community, a company I thought I could trust that has a reputation. And it turns out they didn't just steal from me, they stole from a bunch of people. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever see a dime of it. This is too far gone. But I figured I could share my story and hopefully better equip you guys so the same thing doesn't happen to you. This whole thing begins all the way back in August of 2021 when I first bought the Audi. I started off in a hurry because I had hopes of actually converting this car into a Sport Quattro.
But first, let's actually talk about what the Sport Quattro is. And yeah, I know plenty of you already know, but a few of you probably need a rundown. Born from Audi's racing efforts in the 1980s and a desire to have a homologated road car for their Group B racing effort, the Sport Quattro was born. Now, to be clear, the Sport Quattro shares a lot with the Quattro that we are building, but in truth, it is an entirely different animal. For starters, under the hood is a familiar 2.1-liter inline-5, but this one outputs 300 horsepower, or 50% more than the turbo model we're working with. On top of having wider fenders and much more aggressive bodywork, it's also got a shortened wheelbase, which aids in making it more nimble on its feet. Now, the differences are numerous, but perhaps one of the most important to mention is the fact that the Sport Quattro borrows its windscreen from the Audi 80. It sits at a different angle than the Ur-Quattro as part of a request made by rally drivers to help reduce glare inside the car while racing. Ultimately, this yields a car that is iconic in its overall aesthetic and looks like nothing else on the road, and that's part of the reason why these cars are bringing in well over $500,000 when they do pop up for sale. But I'm going to give you a hot take here. Ignoring the fact that I would love to have one for its heritage, if money were no object, I think these short wheelbase cars look a little bit funny. Of the 164 road cars built, all of them feature this short wheelbase, but there are some Quattros that were raced in long wheelbase trim. It probably makes me the odd man out, but I think these look a lot better, and there are a few others out there that agree, which is why some companies have dove in to build long wheelbase Sport Quattro conversions. I mentioned in the first episode of this build that I had no intention of cutting the car in half to shorten it, but I had every intention of building my own Sport Quattro with a lengthened wheelbase. If we look at this car built by 2Bennett here in Southern California, you'll see that the proportions are incredible. I think this is how the car should have looked from the factory. But I digress, that part doesn't matter. I should just build the car that I want. And so that's exactly what I set out to do.
And so after I bought my car in August of 21, I wasted no time, and within a month, by September, I had already purchased a complete carbon fiber Sport Quattro long wheelbase conversion from a company in Latvia. And we're talking about the entire body to this car. It's a replacement hood, front fenders, the front bumper, the rear bumper, the rocker panels, and the rear quarter panels. And if I remember right, it also came with a rear spoiler. So very big kit that has a pretty decent cost attached to it, $7,000. But at that price, I also know what I'm getting. It's not going to be show quality parts. I have read online and heard from other people that anything that shows up is going to take a lot of work to get fitted, to get panel gapped. It's going to take a lot of time in the body shop and paint booth to make this thing look good, but that's okay. It's work that I'm willing to put in and or pay for when it leaves my skill set. That stuff's fine with me.
What's not, though, is how long it took to get the parts, or rather to say, I still don't have them. If we rewind all the way back to the beginning of this Audi project when I unveiled it on the channel, it's important to note that this was nearly 10 months after I had paid for the body kit, and it still wasn't here. By this point, I had actually asked for a refund, and I think with good reason, because this is how things went down. I originally paid for the body kit on Saturday, October 9th, 2021. And with that, I was originally quoted 10 to 12 weeks for delivery. Now, I know how these things go, so I was patient and waited until the 12 weeks were over to ask for an update, and that's when I was given my first reply. On January 3rd, I was told they'd be back in the shop building parts on the 10th of January. A couple of weeks later, they followed up and said that if all goes well, they will be shipping the kit out in February. And so I continued to wait patiently. Nearly 5 months after I made the initial payment, and 2 months late, I was told that most of the parts were done and they'd be ready to ship soon. But of course, that wasn't true, and by the end of April, I was starting to receive vague excuses.
And the vague excuses kept coming. By May, I finally had to lean on them a little bit and say, hey, are we really gonna have parts showing up here, or is this going nowhere? Because if it's the latter, we gotta start talking about a refund. But I was reassured my parts were going to show up, and so I continued to wait until August when I finally put my foot down and said, guys, this is enough. I want my money back because it's clear that this isn't gonna happen. I'm not gonna get my parts.
Unfortunately, that's when things got worse. Although initially I was told it would be no problem to receive my refund, it only took a couple of weeks before the excuses for the refund started to come in too, ultimately yielding a situation that was clearly a robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario. I was told that they needed more people to buy body kits before they'd even have enough money to pay me back, and that made it clear that they didn't have parts or money, and this was all a sham. But given that they're in Latvia and I'm in the United States, doing anything about it was also an equally big challenge. So I did what I thought was reasonable and continued to wait in hopes that something would pan out. I was told that he was looking for potential investors to help save his company, which seemed like a possibility that perhaps I'd get paid back, or at worst at least get the parts that I ordered, which I eventually told him just give me something. But the excuses continued for months, and finally in March of last year, I told him if he didn't get something sorted out, I'd be forced to publish a video outlining the entire scenario to protect other people from the same problem. Because the reality is, over that year, I had reached out and talked to a number of other enthusiasts who had bought the exact same kit and were in the exact same position. It turns out that this man had not only stolen money from me, but from lots of other people.
So before I talk about who stole this money from me, I want to talk about why I didn't make this video sooner. Because realistically, I could have made this video a year ago and maybe even have saved somebody else from the same fate, from having money stolen from them. And that's a hard one to think about because then I feel responsible. But the reason I didn't do it, and you guys might crucify me for this, I hope somebody out there understands, I was selfish because I didn't want to put myself in an even worse position and have it be a detriment to the channel and what I do here. I do this. This is my job, and I'm very fortunate that it is. And I love what I do. I live to build these cars. And my greatest fear is somebody trying to take that away from me by starting a feud with them, whether it's with that person that stole the money or their community, their followers, what have you. If they started feuding and started interacting negatively with you guys, with my followers, with my sponsors, trying to copyright strike my channel, who knows what? Just this, what could be a feud over a lot of money, but not a ton of money, just didn't feel worth it. I'm here because I want to be here because I love this, and it's not worth money to me to have that stripped away. And yeah, it's selfish, but hopefully it makes sense. It's why I didn't make this video sooner. So of course you ask, why am I making a video now? Well, it's because this company is defunct. I've had somebody reach out on behalf of them attempting to possibly refund me. They've gotten some payment information. Do I think it'll happen? Absolutely not. But there's a chance. I doubt it, but you never know. The company is gone. This is a non-issue anymore. The money is gone. It's game over. It's over. And so all I can hope is that I can tell you guys kind of this story and what I went through and say, hey, be careful out there because you never know who is on the other side of it. And it's unfortunate that people in our own community are, focusing more on greed and their own gain than benefiting the community as a whole. It's a heartbreaker. So who is it? Well, most of you guys probably realized if you are watching this and you're an Audi guy and I said Latvia, it's Cool Wheels. And this is a company that has a following. It's a company that I know people have bought parts from. I know that they're not the best quality, but I expected to at least get them. And it's unfortunate that this whole thing just went sideways. It's a bummer because that money could have gone a long way on this car, and it's why it has sat here for so long. If we had the body kit, we could have been making progress on the body, and if we had the money, we could have been making progress on the engine, but instead, now this thing is $7,000 in the hole, and I've got to allocate funds in different places to make this whole thing work. It's a business, and sometimes you have to make decisions that make sense or some that don't, and it's unfortunate that's where the state of the Audi is.
So where do we go from here? Well, first and foremost, it is critically important for me to say, or rather beg, that none of you do anything about this. Don't go after Cool Wheels or the owner. Don't go making a stink or making posts. Don't harass anybody. Don't do anything other than just continue to support this channel. That's all I'm asking. This is, at its worst, just a very expensive bump in the road, but realistically, it's already a few years old and we're moving past it. At least I am, and I can forgive and forget. This isn't the end of the world. As said a moment ago, what's most important to me is to not create drama or strife or any form of headache around what I do here, because I just love it, and that's what I want to continue doing. And if that means it costs me $7,000, or if it means it costs me the opinion of some of you guys because I should have spoken up sooner, well, I guess that's a cost I'll have to endure. But hopefully my decision-making at least makes some sense to you guys. Naming and shaming isn't my thing. It's not how I want to operate. It's not what I want to do, even if it's just. Sometimes we get bit, and this time it was my turn. But ultimately, I hope that this episode at least provides a little bit of insight as to where the Audi project has been going, what we've been up to, what I've been dealing with, and of course, I hope that it educates you guys to make informed decisions about how and where you spend your money. Although I don't really know how to educate you beyond that, because even I fell victim to what I thought was a safe company to purchase from. But nevertheless, it is what it is, and at this point, all that we're going to do is continue working on the Audi and making forward progress. We've got the suspension done, I've got some new parts to go on, I've got wheels and tires to test fit in an upcoming episode, and ultimately, I want to get that engine built so we can get this thing back on the road as soon as possible. So, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, don't miss the next episode coming up on this thing, or, of course, the new big project announcement I'm hoping to have go live before too long. It's going to be a good one, I promise. Your support means the world to me. Thank you guys for the understanding and for watching this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.